welcome everyone. I have a feeling that there'll be more joining us, but I'm gonna kick off anyway, just because of the time management of it all. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us during International Coaching Week. This week is partly celebration, which is what we're going to have today, hopefully with the learning. And it's also the intention is to empower. Hopefully, you'll be empowered to make some better decisions for yourselves going forward, and inspired to kind of take some action that you may have been waiting and maybe not having the clarity. So hopefully, you'll get some clarity today as well. It's wonderful to have you with us today. I know people are joining from different parts of the world. Our panelists are spread, I think, 8-hour time differences. I hope this will be a thoughtful, practical conversation around coaching in organizations, but also the professional environment of coaching. At International Coaching Education, we work with professionals, again, across the globe. The idea is they come to either add skills to their toolbox at work and increase their professional capability, or they're coming in with some kind of transition in mind to become coaches and start this long-term professional direction. So at International Coaching Education, we are ICF accredited. We base our coaching on strength-based methodology. So all the panelists will have had that methodology during their training as coaches. We're focused largely on experienced professionals, leaders, and also HR practitioners. And actually, the 4 panelists tonight are all from HR backgrounds. And of course, we deal with professionals across different sectors and different regions. So this week's event, they've all been designed as a progression. The idea is we want you to explore coaching from different perspectives. So we started with experiencing coaching in practice. So we did a demo on Monday. And then we had another panel talking about the career transition into coaching, mainly entrepreneurs and executives on the panel. And in today's discussion, we're talking about coaching. How is it applied in organizations? How is coaching effective in organizations and also in professional environments? So today is really about exploring how does coaching operate in real professional context? Hence the 4 panelists today. And the idea is we want to explore what makes it credible. Why is coaching of value? How is it actually used? And what professionals discover when they move from leadership or HR into coaching world. So before I go on, I just want to make sure there's nobody waiting at the door. Let me check to see if we've got everybody in. Okay, there's a few more people joining us. So I'm going to do a quick intro of myself and the panelists, and then we'll dive into the conversation. So my name is Taimur Miri. I am an ICF Master Certified Coach, founder of International Coaching Education. Over the past 2.5 decades, I've been working with organizations across Europe, Middle East, US primarily, around leadership, strength-based coaching, and coaching development. And over the years, I've had the privilege for being in an environment where I train other coaches to go through various levels of ICF credentialing. But today, it really isn't about you hearing from me. It's much more about hearing from our panelists, professionals who have experienced this transition from when they were in the HR world. Some of them are still in the HR world, and they're integrating coaching in real organizations and also in real leadership contexts. So I want to go one by one and just quickly introduce the panel. So when we start discussing, you have some context. We have Jada Gultan, based in Canada. She brings 20 years of HR leadership experience across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Now, Jada has also played an important role with both the HR and coaching communities in British Columbia. She's deeply passionate about how coaching empowers people across organizational settings. Welcome, Jada. We also have Dipti Deshpande joining from Dubai, currently global people head at Orchard Creations. Dipti brings extensive international HR experience across industries, including tech, healthcare, retail, and startups, and is now integrating coaching very actively into her leadership and people work. Welcome, Dipti. Angie Severe is also based in Canada, and her work focuses on surrounding and supporting individuals in meaningful transition, self-leadership, and personal evolution. Angie brings a coaching approach that combines personal development, emotional awareness, and deep transformational work. Welcome, Angie. And last but not least, we have Dr. Ida Kalishkan, based in Dubai. Ida is a senior HR leader and organizational development professional with over 20 years experience of international in leadership and talent development. And this is in areas of designing internal coaching frameworks and supporting coaching-based leadership inside organizations. So, well, welcome, Ida, and you've now kind of heard a little bit about our four panelists and myself. I think what's especially valuable today, and in our discussion today, is that we've got four individuals, all of them coming from HR and organizational background. All of them have transitioned and have completed their coaching education journey. They bring different perspectives around how coaching is applied internally and in leadership development, and also how they're applying it with their external clients, working as a coach with running their own business. So rather than this being a formal presentation or training of sorts, we want to make this kind of feel like a conversation where you get a feel for what coaching looks like in practice, including some of the realities, surprises, challenges, and also the value that we hear coaching is bringing in organizations and to leadership development. Before we begin, I am going to kind of reverse the table. You've heard about us. I'd like to get a sense of who is here with us today. So I'd like to just share a survey. It really is to get a feel for what best describes your current journey in relation to coaching. So I've just put the poll up, and I'm going to share the poll once you guys have responded, so we can kind of get a feel for who's in the room. We're almost there. Just going to give a little bit more time for our participants to share. And we've got some more people joining us. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I apologize if you've been waiting in the waiting room. I'm kind of doing two things at once. So I've just noticed you've been waiting. So welcome if you've been waiting. And I trust that as you've joined, you also have a chance to answer the poll question of which of these best describes your current relationship in your coaching journey. If you've just joined us, if you could respond as well, that'd be great. I'm going to share just so that you get a view. I'm already seeing the results come through, and it's interesting that the group currently here is really a mixture of those of you who are currently in coach training or just completed, and those who are already practicing coaching professionally. So around 50-50, really, if you look at the results. So welcome. I'm gonna close this poll, and then um, I think one of the things I hope we will value today out of this discussion is that we've got a diverse perspective, both from the panelists and also when we open up to speak about your experiences today. So, without further ado, I'd like to start our panel discussion. I'd love to begin perhaps with a more personal starting point from our panelists. So I'll start with Angie. Um, and the question is, what originally made you personally decide to train as a coach? Angie?
Hello, everyone. Well, that's actually a very good question. When I started looking at what I would wanted to do after HR, because I left HR after 12 years in HR, but I was kind of on a sabbatical at the time, and I was wondering what I wanted to do. I was not sure I wanted to stay in HR. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do more. I was diving inside a lot of things. And what came out most importantly for me at the time was what I was witnessing around me. I was a lot in energy therapies at the time during that sabbatical period, and I saw how much people were emotionally, mentally, and physically drained, burnt out. And what struck me more at the time was how normalized this was becoming.
Mm,
It was kind of a shock, but at the same time, a big question. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And I slowly started to question myself about how I could help people understand where they were going, what they wanted, and what was more important for them. This is when I started to realize that people were actually losing themselves in predefined systems, expectations, pressures, structures. They were trying to survive, but they were not living. Nobody was really living inside the structure. And I guess that's a moment when I started to feel like, okay, I need to do more. Going back to HR after my sabbatical was not what I wanted to do, because if I was going back, I was going to do exactly the same thing, and I didn't want to do that. And I started to explore other things. I had a degree in psychology, so I explored psychology as becoming a psychologist, but that was not really me, and there was a reason why I stopped after the degree. And then coaching emerged. It was natural for me because it was my way of seeing where I could help people reconnect with themselves, reclaim their voice, and rediscover their freedom. So I guess this is where coaching really started to appear for me at the time.
thank you. Thanks, Angie. It's interesting you mentioned burnt out. Over the years, there's a lot of indication that people at work experience lower engagement, higher burnout, and directly influences performance. And interestingly enough, this is where actually companies are more and more asking for coaches to come in and assist. So just kind of there's a linkage there as you were talking about that. So let's hear from Jada. Jada, what about you?
Thank you, Taymor. Well, I got my first coaching training in 2004, and that year, actually, our company kind of launched a new training and management and training consultancy company, and we had one coach under our like kind of umbrella. I wanted to learn more. That's one of the reasons that I got that training so that I could sell it actually to others. Uh, and but through that, I was exposed to a different group of people. One of the, I think, for myself, I was hoping to get some great skills to keep my composure because, I wanted to be speaking more professionally and looking up or showing up more professionally. And I thought it really gave me great skills, life skills as a person working in HR and being more credible. Um, Maybe it's the jargon. I don't know. I think it's mostly the skill set, like tuning in, listening. yeah, giving space.
Yeah, I love that. Jada, I'm sure you've experienced this over the last couple of decades, how organizations are realizing it's also about the mindset. So as you're learning your coaching skills, it's the way you're showing up as a professional. And that approach, that coaching approach, opens up things that otherwise might have shut down. So we may hear some of this as we talk today. Thanks for that. Ida, how about you?
Thank you, Timur. So for me, it's been a long journey in the practice side, as with 22 years plus HR experience. And in the companies I worked before, coaching was always part of the culture until a certain level. And I kind of I was lucky to see what good looks like in the organizations I worked. And from HR side, practically in this organization, I had opportunity to get some coaching training and apply it in practice as an HR practitioner in certain leadership programs, female development programs, especially in the Middle East region. So this was already happening. And from personal side, I really wanted to have this capability with the certain methodology and skills to make sure I'm doing the right thing. On the other hand, from the organizational perspective, when I moved between companies, one of the companies I worked, it was not the case. It was not the culture actually. With what I saw before in terms of coaching culture that we were taking as granted was not there. So leaders were more directive, more authority kind of style. So this was my objective when I started the program itself, how I can transform the company by creating a coaching culture where each leader has this as a capability and where we really develop our people as a skill. So this becomes part of the DNA and culture in the long run. So, and I think to a certain extent we achieved that, but this was my goal initially to start the program.
Great. So it was driven by the fact that you could bring that learning into the organization and actually create change almost from the
Exactly.
internal coaching perspective. Great. Thank you, Ida. Dipti, how about you?
Thank you, Taimur. Hi, everyone. My journey in coaching was a little different. I spent a substantial amount of time growing in the sports industry. So I sort of built my HR career in the sports industry. And like everyone knows, you see a lot of coaching that actively takes place with players or outside of field, to build high performance teams. So that coaching sort of translated into the corporate side of things also in the sports world. And I was recipient of coaching through great coaches while I was in the sports industry. So that really changed and shifted something in me, but I wasn't necessarily reflecting on what had changed. But there came a time when I moved out of the sports industry, I went into the startup world. The challenges that I was facing there as an HR professional were very, very different, and that needed me to think out the box and come up with skills that weren't necessarily there in those organizations at that time. So, having reflected on my journey, speaking to a few people, I realized that I could actually use coaching quite actively in these setups to drive impact. And that's where I started my journey in coaching. It was very different initially. I think my understanding of coaching from a sports perspective was slightly different from what I learned when I came onto the journey.
Mm,
And I can say that it's only getting deeper as I grow. So I don't feel like I've learned everything, but every day, every conversation with an employee or someone else is always a learning experience and a great way of creating impact. So I've sort of transitioned from a recipient to someone who's now actively practicing coaching in every conversation, and now it's become like my muscle memory. So it's coming out in conversations to people without really actively being aware of how it's coming across. So that's been my journey, and it's been very
yeah,
interesting to observe this reflection.
beautiful. A beautiful journey, all four of you. And isn't it funny how you're picking up these common factors that it's driven from personal need depending on the context you are all in. Different contexts, different needs. And all of you have found coaching has had a profound bridge towards kind of stepping up in some shape or form, right? Leveling up personally and also adding value. So, kind of this takes me naturally to this next question is, so we're talking about professionals that come to learn coaching um, a lot of the times initially just for leveling up their professional capability. And then they're thinking somewhere down in the future, I may actually get external clients, I may be coaching externally, and I might even bring coaching inside the coach and become an internal coach. So this thing about transitioning from professional to becoming a coach. So all four of you have, you're in different journeys from what I know of you. So at the beginning, did you actually see yourself becoming a coach? So I want to just start with Ida there.
Thank you, Timur. Actually, given that I am mostly as an internal, still like a talent director, um, of course, as a role model, I would like to be the one, especially in the company internally for leaders, for people managers. Especially, I'm driving the leadership programs and talent development programs. The coaching is very important part to really embed as part of these programs in the succession. When you have high potential people, how we will make sure they are ready for their next steps. So for especially for these high potentials, this is my goal, how I can coach them closely, especially with the strengths-based coaching, how I can focus more on their strengths for the benefit of themselves and for the benefit of the company. So this is, of course, my goal from my individual aspiration perspective, but also creating this culture where like building other coaches is another aspiration I have, not just me, but how I can help others to become either gaining these coaching skills or becoming the actual coach through certification or through other internal coaching programs is my goal on this.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Ida. And how about you, Angie? I know you started by saying you've already transitioned.
Yeah, well, actually, when I started looking and exploring coaching, that was a bit more than 5 years ago. And at the time, I was living in Mauritius. I am originally from Mauritius, and I was living there at the time. And the situation of Mauritius and Canada is not the same. In Mauritius, coaching is not well known as it is here. It was not well recognized. So when I started exploring, a lot of questions came up. I had a lot of credibility as an HR person, but would I still have the same credibility if I became a coach? Would people actually see this as a career progression, as something meaningful, or just feel like she's doing something completely crazy? So that was my main fear at the beginning. But then other fears came up. I was wondering, would I be able to earn an income with coaching?
Mm,
I mean, it's not well known in Mauritius. Who's going to hire me? Who would want to work with a coach who's been an HR before? So those questions came up and were actually life-changing for me because I started to look at myself, at my own identity and who I was. And I realized that staying into human resource was not what I wanted to be. I had outgrown the work. I had outgrown the role, and I was just losing my time and myself into it. I think I was a great HR when I was in it, but I could not continue the way I was. It was slowly burning me out. It was slowly taking away something from me, and walking into coaching made sense to me. But would it make sense to the world? Would it make sense to the people around me, to the professional I work with? So no, there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of insecurities, uncertainties, and a lot of work on myself. I went into coaching myself. I had myself be coached by someone so that I could see what I wanted really. And that helped me actually a lot because
mm,
it's been 5 years. I am an external coach. I have my own coaching practice today. I'm proud of it. I live in Canada, but I still work with Mauritius and I have 50% of my clients from Mauritius. And
wow.
I've been able to build something. So, yeah, it's hard, it's uncertain, but when you step into it, you just have to follow what is good for you and what speaks to your heart, I guess. Well, at least
Yeah.
this was what happened for me.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we often talk about it's a journey, like it really does take time and changing identity from an HR professional to now you are a coach running your own business, that's a mindset shift. It's a change in identity. That takes time. And also, I'm hearing the doubts, right? During the journey. Is this possible? How long will this take? So this is like this is a normal thing we hear as we go through this. The kind of expectation is that there are lots of things to clarify as you go along. Not everything is crystal clear, but there is one thing that draws you, and I'm hearing it from Ida, I'm hearing from Angie, that there is an internal drive, right? Whether I want to become an internal coach, I want to bring this into organizations, or I want to step out of this now and I want to actually create something else. So it's interesting. So let's shift gears and let's talk to Jada. What changed in how you approached leadership, HR, or professional conversations after coach training? How did that change?
Well, things changed quite a bit, I guess, in the last 20 years and more. So, what's changed for me, I'm not anymore very attached to kind of structure always. I let go of that perfectionism and I really bring coaching skills into any setting while I'm working in HR. Like, it may be a conflict resolution meeting, it may be like, our senior leadership meeting. And, they like my CEO, it's like, oh, Jada is having a reckoning moment type of thing. Like, because, when I ask that powerful question, everybody stops. They know that there is time for us to really go in and maybe reflect a little bit.
Mm.
And, that 5,000 feet bird eye view to ourselves. Um, yeah, I think I'm more comfortable in my skin now. Like, before maybe I had more self-doubt. Oh, we need to have it for the entire organization. We need to be more solution focused. No, every moment gives me that opportunity. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, isn't it funny? You started by saying how you wanted to bring skills into your professional world. What you've just said is you have now got to a point where your mindset is coaching. So it's irrespective of where you are, it's showing up, right? It's who you are. Again, it's an identity shift, which kind of it's an unconscious thing happening, right? Interesting. And thank you, Dipti. What about you? What changed?
Thank you, Timur. Thank you. So, I guess the biggest change that I've seen is the way I listen more than the way I speak. That's been a game changer when I have conversations with leadership or
Mm.
generally the team. So as a HR professional, you're grown up, you're growing in a corporate where you always have a problem solving mindset. So what coaching did was it sort of changed that. Instead of trying to fix, advise, find solutions, immediately get into a meeting and say, do this or do that. Now there's a little more of a pause, and there's more of reflection, there's more of curiosity, there's more of asking powerful questions, just like Jira said. There's this powerful question where there's a space that you hold for a person to get to the why of it. And that has been very impactful. So now people know that if it's a surface level thing, there's a solution that comes from an HR professional. But if it's a deeper issue in terms of conflicts, high performance, or generally, growth paths, career paths, there's a much deeper conversation where I hold space for reflection and create awareness. That has created the most impact in the way I hold conversations with people now. So my approach has become more intentional and ultimately it's become more effective in organizations.
I love it. I love the fact that you're saying that in essence your relationship building power has now enhanced to a level where you're showing up differently and others reflect that back because you are different, right? And that's bringing the value. That holding the space is such a powerful thing, right? Especially in an environment where people want to be heard and seen. That's awesome. Thank you for that. So, Ida, I want to ask you a question based on your experience. How is coaching actually used inside organizations in ways that perhaps people outside don't actually often see?
Yeah. So actually, this is also, I think, one of the great examples recently we tried to do in my one of the recent organization, like how we can build coaching culture through coaching as a skill and coaching as a
Mm,
service
yeah.
in two ways. Coaching as a skill is how we can create this capability through different development programs for our leaders, for our people managers, especially people managers who are managing a team. This is very crucial for them to have these skills because to convert their behaviors to be more directive, to more on
Mm,
keeping their employees accountable. But especially, I want to highlight the accountability piece because this is a change I also see in myself, in my leadership as well. Because we always say change starts with ourselves.
mm,
I think how we keep others accountable is totally changed rather than putting them like just KPIs and then directing them do this, do that kind of approach to how we can unlock the potential of this person and help support this person to find their own solutions by themselves keeping themselves accountable, not keeping them accountable directly. So I
yeah.
think this is the biggest shift I see the value of the coaching in certain areas, especially when it comes to specifically to like leadership programs, the outcome of performance and potential career discussions.
Mm,
And you know, when we say development, we always say there is a 70, 20, 10% of model. People learn maybe 70% on the job with projects, 20% with social learning, which is, and in this coaching takes like a huge part, along with mentorship. And 10% is only classroom training and it's part of a growth kind of a methodology. And in this social learning part, I think coaching has a big role to play in organizations where it can be embedded to any area. I mean, because the end goal is really making it a habit and like a daily conversations to be like with coaching conversations, and also making sure we also differentiate it from other programs like mentorship, consulting, or counseling.
yeah.
That which
Yeah.
happens a lot, you know, in organizations that people confuse these different concepts.
Yeah.
So I think I can give those examples that we used a lot in internal development programs in the organizations. And when I see it's lacking, I directly kind of start become, okay, coaching is missing here. So how we can embed to any program moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So I'm also noticing through the work I do is that companies, more and more companies, have realized that if people who are managing others learn the coaching mindset and the coaching skills and show up with that mindset, they will have a more engaged team. And accountability is definitely one of the things, right, that we see shift in
Exactly.
organizations. And also new ideas generation, right? Growth comes from that whole space, as Dipti was saying, that we create for others. And I think some people that are listening may not be in the HR profession. I believe this works across all professions. I don't come from an HR background, and yet when I was in corporate world, coming from business development side and commercial side of things, I had individuals that worked with me or for me. And as I started to learn these skills, my approach and my just me seeing them changed, which meant the whole energy and the whole conversation and their response consequently changed with it. So, having external coaches coming into organizations servicing senior leaders or high potential individuals is something that kind of we hear a lot about. But inside organizations, this thing about leaders or team leaders shifting their mindset and also internal coaches being available for across the board whoever wants coaching, you can have a coach. That is a super powerful arrangement that I've seen, and I think either you're actively kind of embedding this in organizations. So thank you all of you for kind of opening up this panel conversation. And I think what strikes me listening to the four of you is how differently coaching seems to show up across professional environments, right? But there is this consistency that we're seeing a change in the quality of conversations, whether it's yours or how you're impacting others, change their conversation with you or their teams. So I want to just reflect back to the audience here. I'm imagining that many of you listening kind of relate to what you're hearing. Some things seem familiar, and there may be some other parts that may be different, or perhaps it's challenging some of your assumptions. And I'd love to open up the conversation slightly, kind of wider at this stage, and hear what's standing out for you that's been listening. What's standing out for you that's been listening in the audience?
Can I say?
Of course.
Hi, everyone. So, what I noticed from when you're talking is that coaches have so much desire to bring more impact on people. But in reality, I'm struggling also noticing around that people are not seeing the value of coaching, especially in the companies. Sometimes people are looking for mentorship instead of coaching, and the actual result of coaching is hard to define when people didn't experience that. So it's very interesting how coaches are into coaching itself, but how the world is not seeing value of coaching enough.
Thank you, Victoria. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah.
So I want to just, it's a great observation, because I think going back a couple of years ago, ICF did a survey, and we are now noticing a big shift of people saying they have heard of coaching. So the survey is showing a higher percentage of people saying, "Yeah, I've heard of coaching. I think I know what it is." And then when they've asked them what it is, the majority is still confused about what actually it is, right? So what you just said it doesn't surprise me. Ida, do you want to share anything here from your perspective?
Sure. I think when people in the organizations move from an individual contributor, like where they are not managing a team and they are just concerned about their part, which is like mostly technical domain, maybe they have. There is an assumption in organizations and leaders when, okay, if they have a high performance as an individual, when we bring them in a people leader position, they will continue to be successful. But unfortunately, it's not the case. I saw many examples where very strong performance brought to a people manager role, and they failed a lot because they didn't know how to really coach people, how to motivate them, how to engage them, and how to unlock their potential. So, in this space, especially when a person with deep technical expertise, high performer, and they become a leader tomorrow, what brought them to that role will not take them to future. So this is where coaching really plays a key role. When they learn these coaching skills, then they can support their team to be more successful, to be more engaged, and to perform better in a sustainable way, not just in short term, in long term. Yeah, this is what I can clearly say, and I saw many cases on this during my time.
Thanks for sharing. I'm working in the company like as internal coach and also as a team leader. And when I'm trying to support also leaders, I'm noticing that they are looking for kind of new leaders, looking for kind of support technical wise, like how to give feedback, how to do stuff. So they are looking kind of for instruction. And what I'm wondering whether it's more valuable to not give them instructions or actually give them some programs that will give them more instructions. So what do you think?
It
Ida, do you
depends.
want to follow?
Yeah, maybe I can just to close the loop on this. I may say it depends. It doesn't mean mentorship is not required. In many certain circumstances, if the person needs to improve certain things and they need direct guidance, of course, this also apply. And embedding coaching doesn't mean people will need a coach forever. It means I think we might talked about the mindset shift at the beginning. I think Timer, you highlighted about how we can have this growth mindset and shift in the mindset from being more directive to a coach mindset. I think this is the real game changer. And once you embed this culture in the organization, then this becomes a habit. You don't need like always a coach comes and coach you all the time. So and you may continue to have mentor or consultation. This is also needed in different contexts. So we just need to understand the context and in which situations we need coaching and in which situations we need mentoring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Victoria, either just if I want to speak from a coaching language, what either I heard say is the leader that's listening to this person that's asking for something. That leader, what question are they asking of themselves? So is the leader saying, what is this person wanting? Have they had training in this particular thing? So if the leader is asking some questions, then they will be much more clearer which direction to go. If they don't ask the question and they go autopilot, their autopilot might be, I go straight into mentoring or I go straight into training. But if they ask questions and become clear themselves, and that's why leaders learning coaching and the coaching mindset become much more effective, because they will evaluate by observing and listening to what not has been said, and then being able to really give the person what they really need. And that may simply be, look, you've had the training, what's stopping you? What's in your way? So you ask a powerful question, let them open up and give you some response. So this is a really powerful kind of conversation, what you just opened up, Victoria, in terms of what's possible in enhancing performance within organizations or through coaching. Thank you for that question. Is it Diana? Diana?
Yes, it is, and very good. I have about 1,000 questions, and I could even follow through with that. But what I originally put my hand up for was to just get a bit of engagement on what I'm noticing. So I don't come from an HR background. I'm also not an internal coach. I'm an external coach. But what I'm noticing with any of my colleagues who have an HR background and are internal within an organization, they seem to be struggling with in a position of constantly having to deal with HR issues and not really able to coach the people that they're supposed to be coaching. And on top of that, they're noticing that the individuals that they are, whether they're high performing or just new into leadership, they're really not willing to truly tell that coach what's going on. They're afraid of what others are going to somehow hear somewhere down the line. And so what I've heard is that if they really want to have coaching for this individual and really get them to sort of thrive, having an external coach seems to be more beneficial. I don't know if anybody's noticing that or hearing that, but that's just what I'm noticing with my colleagues here in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, you're already seeing, I think, visually the response. So Dipti, do you wanna come in?
Yeah, I can take this. Well, this is an amazing question that you brought up because this is where I found myself maybe about 7, 8 months back when I started a coaching journey with one of our high potential, recently promoted managers. So initially, I guess the situation was such that the first two conversations, I just had to hold space and ensure that there was trust that was built in the conversation. It's always very tricky as a HR professional or an in-house HR plus an in-house coach, because a lot of times you're taking a call around drawing boundaries, and sometimes there are conversations which need an HR approach or a conversation that sometimes needs a coaching approach. So a lot of times, if I feel like certain queries that are coming to me are more in the HR space, I simply just very clearly just set it out saying, look, let's have a HR conversation on this, which is a little more directional in nature and maybe a little more solution oriented. And when it comes to certain it's always a call that you take as an HR professional, whether, this requires a coaching conversation, or is this going to be more of a surface level conversation, which is more solution driven. So once you've done that and you've clarified that, we're working towards, let's say, growth of an individual, or, what does it mean to be a manager, a successful manager, and we've got some goals in place, initially the first two sessions is more about building trust with the individual. And once you build that trust and they understand that, the information that's coming through these conversations isn't going to be used to judge them or to share with, different sponsors, I think that then creates a safe space and that journey starts becoming very meaningful. I mean, I had this individual come to me after about 7 months, 6, 7 months, saying that initially it was very tricky because I wasn't sure whether this information was going to be used against me or with me. But now I understand that, there is a deeper connection I have with you, and I'm able to speak to you much better. So the beauty of having an internal HR person as a coach is that there is a lot of relatability on issues or certain circumstances. And that unfolds only when, you've got that background or you understand what that person's journey is. Because look, you're always going to have 45 to 50 minutes with an external coach and sometimes even less than that. So that bond is always going to be limited to that session. But as a in-house HR coach, I have more of that connection that builds over messages, over circumstances, over the company's background, the communication style, and there's a more awareness around the culture of the company as well. So I think the impact becomes deeper, but yes, it's tricky, like you said, initially.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dipti. Thank you. Ida, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on that, especially for the trusts that Dipti already highlighted. This is definitely a foundation, but this is a great question in terms of highlighting the conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest can happen internally because the HR person is also HR of this employee for all employment
Yeah.
cycle. So what we did in the recent program that we built as an example, thinking these concerns actually. And it depends on the size of the company. But as we had the opportunity to have multiple HR people for multiple businesses, multiple P&Ls, we kind of build a mechanism identifying internal coaches who are certified and having a cross kind of coach between HR teams and organizations. Like, for example, if the person is the HR of the organization, we didn't recommend them to be the coach of this organization. We gave them as a coach for another organization, so they don't have any influence on their employment decisions. So, and to trust perspective, we had some, like we do in external coaching, like agreements, like consent from the employee. Both sides agree and sign a document that this is a confidential conversation. No third party will be, have access, etc. This kind of foundation, if it is there, then I think program may work good as much as in an external. Of course, the value of external coach is really also important, especially in at executive level. But when it comes to mid management, companies don't have that much budget or investment because it's a big investment. I think this is a differentiator more on the external versus internal coach.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see, Diane, you've got what you needed, at least a part. So I want to. I think we've dived into it. I want to dive further in terms of a little bit more deeper into some of the realities or misconceptions of people encountering coaching. And I want to go to Jada here and maybe build up on some of the questions we've just had. If you look at coaching and the difference or the differentiation around coaching, how does that genuinely create value inside organizations?
Well, again, I'm not very much into structure of things like, because I just use every opportunity to bring in coaching, every opportunity. So like, if I do coaching myself, I always ask permission. But other than that, like we have a roster of coaches. our local ICF chapter here had used to have actually coach giving program, or like, I know people who are doing pro bono coaching. So it's not, no, we have professional development funds. If someone really identifies themselves as, they want to get more, then I have resources that I can connect them with. It might be even like, hey, why don't you sign up for ICE, uh, coaching international coaching week events. Like, I think exposure makes difference. People need to, because I've seen in my lifetime that people changed religion, people got divorced, people changed professions through coaching. And that's
Sure.
all happened through my efforts somehow. Like, I'm not feeling like, I'm the wizard at the background, but I brought those coaches in. Like, they had like 5 sessions. And then after 5 sessions, there had been some tremendous changes in their lives, and they're more freer and
Right.
confident. So, I'm not gonna get into like what coaching is not, but those were all certified coaches, like accredited certified coaches that I kind of, hook up with our crew.
So Jada, what really stands out is the word you used is the word change.
Hmm.
So if an individual is looking for some change that they're going to create within themselves,
Hmm.
then introducing them to the coaching methodology and a coach allows them to then become clear of what that change is and the steps, and then through the several sessions, they get to where they want to get to, or at least closer. So it's
Hmm.
really that's kind of maybe the differentiation here is that critical word. Are they looking for some kind of change, and are they ready to create that change? And that
True.
would that would
Can
be
I,
a beautiful spot.
can I add one more thing? It's the
Mm,
whole person always. We
yeah.
kind of, it's not just no, a part of the person. It's always the whole person.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I want to jump to Angie here. So thinking in the context of misunderstandings. So what's misunderstood from the professionals you work with about coaching?
Many of my clients, when they come to me, they think that I'm just going to fix them, help them just have goals, performance, and just give them the but tailor-made thing. But I don't do that. I don't do tailor-made. It's just every person is different, every client is different, so I have a different approach with everyone. What stands out is that what people don't understand is that coaching is actually transformational. And again, we go back to change. It's going to change everything because with coaching, you're going to sit with yourselves. You're going to sit with your patterns, your choices, your responsibilities, and your possibilities. Out of all this, you're going to feel like, okay, it's actually more. It's not just setting goals and reaching performances or reaching a goal. It's really about who am I when I enter the coaching space and who I leave when I leave that coaching space after a certain number of months, after a certain number of sessions, or very often they decide to continue because they realize that there is more work to do. And the work is not about changing only themselves, it's about understanding themselves more. And the more people understand themselves, the more they want to understand themselves, actually. And the more they want to contribute differently to themselves and to the people around them. The professionals who comes to me go back to their companies feeling different. They bring something else to the company because they have been learning more about themselves. They have been learning about self-leadership, which they didn't have. They heard that they had to be good leaders, but they don't know how to be good leaders. And they thought it was just something that you learn at school. But actually, leadership starts with self-leadership. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else. So coaching is really about transformation and understanding yourselves.
Yeah, my personal experience is when I first was introduced to coaching, it was a leadership program within the company, and there was 20 of us being coached, both individually and in a group. And for me, it was incredible that at that age I was being asked things that I could not answer immediately. Like that was the biggest surprise for me. It's like, oh my God, I actually don't know what I think about that or what nobody's asked me that kind of question before. And to me, that was scary. It was scary not to know. And it took a while for me to get to know it because I had to dig deep. And I think that's the transformation that Angie, you're referring to, right? It really goes deep in terms of our own understanding of what drives us, who we are, what's our strengths, all that good stuff. So thank you for that. So why don't you carry on, and I'll kind of draw you in and Jada on this. Um, so as you have gone through your own coaching experience, what's become more challenging about coaching than you expected?
Two things, actually. The first one was holding space. I
Mm,
didn't know how to do that. I thought I was a good active listener. I had no clue what it was, a real active listener, until I did my coaching training, and then I heard what it was, and then I learned what it was, and I started to practice it. It's
mm,
easier when someone tells you hold space. You don't know what it is until you actually do it and you learn to do it. And because I am a very solution-driven person from my HR background, but also from my own personality, it was very complicated for me to just sit there and feel like I am doing nothing. Literally what you said, we feel like we are helpless, but we are actually not, because we learn to listen and we learn to support differently. That was my first biggest challenge. The second one was about emotions. I am an empath and I tend to carry everybody's emotion around me. Over the years, I've learned not to do that. But when I went into coaching, the mechanism was still there underneath it. Even if I knew how not to do it, I started to do it all over again, because these are your clients. You want to support them. You want to do more for them. You want them to leave with an impression that something has really worked today. So you feel like you're
mm.
carrying their emotions is going to help. It does not. But that was also another learning path for me, to learn to completely detach. And this is one of my favorite words today, because detachment, a lot of people think detachment is you are completely out of it and you're not interested and you don't care. But actually, detachment comes with love, with care, with support, and with many, many things that are so important. So, yeah,
Yeah,
these were my two hardest parts.
powerful, very powerful and very personal. Thanks for that. Jada, what about you?
Well, it's again, like, there is a structure that you need to abide by. Like, and it's always hard for me because I lose my authenticity with that structure. That's my gremlin. Like, oh my God, like, it's if it's in my head. But I think what I've done good is that, I practiced that, even though it didn't really um, fit well at the time. I was uncomfortable. I kept practicing. I kept practicing. And that muscle, it's now a part of me. I ask permission, like, I slow down, or like, whatever those structures are, I constantly, like, and consciously incorporate it into my daily habits. So, so I think I'm showing up more authentic now than before. Um, yeah, that was the biggest challenge. Yeah.
Awesome. So, this reminds me of ICF's reference to all this about competency two, where, we're asked to reflect before, after sessions, throughout our engagements. And one of the reasons we're reflecting is to understand ourselves more. And, the two examples here, it's about how we're showing up as a coach and how can we change, and through our change we become better coaches. And I love that about coaching, because it's never ending, right? You're just constantly learning about yourself and growing, and that's why we bring more value to our clients, right? As we change, we create more value. So let's switch that, and let's go to Dipti and ask, um, what's become more meaningful than you expected as a coach?
Yeah, thank you, Tamar. So, couple of things, that have become much more meaningful in generally in the coaching scenario is one is that, the impact is that simply people feel that they're truly heard. So,
Mm,
when coaching conversations take place, I am hearing the why, which means that there's a much deeper conversation creating awareness. The
mm,
second thing is that, organizations these days are super busy. You've got people from multiple backgrounds, people from multiple, generations actually that you see. So you have like, various generations. And when you are simply having conversations, sometimes you're directional with people. Coaching shifts that, right? You're not directional. You're building accountability. You're building that listening ability. You're doing more than what a normal conversation between a subordinate or a team member takes place. So, that additional impact of creating a space of reflection, a pause in a very, very busy, pressure driven environment, plus a non-directional conversation which is more towards building accountability by them taking charge of what's necessary to fix things, so people automatically feel that they are in control. And this, in general, is a mindset change that's building a healthy culture within the organization. So, having practiced this for the last 1 year in this organization, I can immediately see that, people do ask powerful questions. People don't necessarily, try to find the first solution. They take the time to reflect, sit on it, and come back with a solution which is much deeper and it's coming out of them. So there's a lot more accountability. You obviously have to have other things in place, which is, creating an environment where it's okay to fail if you had to take decisions which are yours. But the decision of going in a certain direction is still yours, right? It's your individual decision. So I think that meaningful impact is what I say is happening right now with coaching coming into the picture.
Yeah, beautiful. When I take all that in, for me it translates into how you've the meaning for you is about how you are creating a space for others to see who they really are and to open up into that space of seeing their potential, which is this thing about moving from directive to a coaching mindset, and um, whether it's at work through HR, I see it with my wife, I see it with my friends. As you do that, you see the energy shift in others, and the more they see that, that we see how beautiful it is, right, that they are and what they can have, it's kind of it's a beautiful gift, right? It's one of those things that you can take anywhere, whether it's home or at work. So I get that. That's like that's a big one. Thank you for that, Dipti. So I want to ask, before we go to the Q&A, I'd like to ask the the panelists to think about what they would like to leave us with in terms of how would you say the professionals um, that are that you're dealing with or in this audience today, how can they move forward from wherever they are? So, the room is primarily people who have just completed their education or they're in the profession. So from the audience perspective, what would you leave them with in terms of kind of moving to the next step? And if you were saying the same thing to people who are wondering, oh, should I go into the coaching world? Because people will be listening to this video afterwards as well. What would you say? What would you leave them with today if you had to give your penny's worth? So Ida, why don't we start with you?
Okay. So I think for me, coaching is a science and art together. And like any science and art, it takes time and it needs an investment to yourself and to others. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like a deep ocean, and every day you learn something new. I'm sure, Timer, you still keep learning, even you're a master coach.
For sure.
So I think it's a big awareness. And if you want to change something, first starting yourself, transform yourself as an individual and transform other individuals and other organizations. I think if you are interested on this journey, I think start today because it's a long journey and it's never late.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Ida. Jada, what about you?
Don't even think a minute, just jump right in because like 2004, 2026, I surrounded myself with people like-minded people, first off, and that the people that you're hanging out with is actually determining the quality of your mindset too. So, I have a lot of coach friends. I have a large coaching community, and I think curiosity never ends with that. First off, I want it for myself. It's good for me. Coaching really is good for me. So, but from there it expands, of course. So, absolutely, don't even think twice.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Dipti?
Thanks, Temur. I guess Ida and Jada have sort of covered it, but if I had to sort of say why, I would say that, it totally changed the person that I am today, right? It's a very different person from who started a coaching journey to where I am today. Um, so if you're considering coaching or you've already completed coaching, I know there's a period where you feel where, should you be doing this or is this okay? Am I doing it right? Honestly, you're always going to learn, and that shift in you is going to help you and build the confidence of being aware as to what you need or what your client needs. So wherever you are, whether you're in an organization or you're an independent coach or you're building your coaching journey, first it's going to shift you and your mindset, and it's going to then create a much deeper transformational impact on everyone that you work. So this is kind of a service that you do to the society. So look at it from that perspective and create that impact. I think just go for it and have fun.
I love it. Go for it. Have fun. Thanks for that, Angie.
I think my colleagues have already said everything, but I'm just going to say coaching is about growth and evolution. The more you work with others, the more you will learn about yourself, and the more you keep learning, and the more you can give back. So for me, it's really it's a never-ending story. You give, you get back, and it goes on and on like that, and it's really rewarding.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. So before we go to Q&A, there's a couple of things that I want to put on the table for as part of this International Coaching Week. We've decided as a limited kind of availability as part of the celebration. We're making available a limited number of pro bono coaching sessions with members of our ICE coaching community. For those who are thinking about either exploring into coaching or wanting to expand either their business or their competencies, and they think they would benefit by working with a coach. So we have a wide community from different geographies. The way to access it is to use this email address, which I'm going to put into chat. It's info@icoachingeducation.com. If you would like to have that gift, please come to us. We have a limited number of coaches who will work with you. Also, I'm going to put a poll to ask whether any of you is in a place where you would benefit by having a separate conversation with me one-on-one in terms of moving towards becoming a coach. As I say, my forte right now is working with coaches who want to build their business and move it towards a sustainable business. So if you're stuck somewhere or you're thinking about moving forward and you want to have that conversation and explore, just again, contact us or fill in this form and tell us that you want to go ahead. I don't know whether you can see the poll come up. Can you? Has the poll come up?
It
Can you
did,
see it?
and then it's gone.
It came
It
up and
did
it's
for a
gone?
bit.
And
Yeah.
it's gone. Mhm.
That is strange. So let's see if I can. Maybe it's already got the responses. I don't know. I can't see it. But if you can't access the poll, just send me or the team an email, info@icoaching education.com. So let's move to the Q&A part. Um, so I know that one of you has put a question in the chat, and I'm just going to read the question and then ask one of the panelists to respond. The question is, how do you stay in the coach mode when you are an expert in the HR work topic? Okay, so how do you stay in the coach mode? So, Dipti, do you want to respond to that? Because I think it came up when you were sharing.
December, I can take that. Yeah, so it's always tricky to shift gears from a coaching mode to a HR mode. But a lot of times, looking at what the question is or what that scenario is, you can always differentiate by creating a special space. So first thing is that, if you're coaching a certain individual, you have a coaching journey that's mapped out with them over 4 sessions, 6 sessions, 10 sessions, or a goal driven coaching session. So that's completely different. As an HR professional, sometimes you have like I like to call them surface level queries, which are specific HR queries around some HR organizational issues that people want answers to, which are very straightforward. So you can't necessarily be in a coaching or wear a coaching hat while you're approaching those. But a slightly deeper conversation, which is more around let's say culture, maybe a little more about their reflection, their growth, their performance, or what next sort of conversations. That is where you start asking powerful questions. Even in team setups, when you're talking to people, you're probably holding coffee with HR sessions or your Friday sessions, whatever it is that your organization has. Coaching actually equips you to ask powerful questions. So there's no limit or there's no special scenario that you need to ask powerful questions. You just need to think about the scenario in with a view of what is it that the person wants. And once you know that, that should help you in addressing it in an HR or a coaching setup. uh, I don't know if this has confused you, but I guess it's a little bit of clarity that you need to bring to the individual, and sometimes just direct them to a specific HR conversation, which can be another conversation that you can set up following a coaching conversation. So I normally do that with my clients. When I see that a question pops up, which is more from an HR space, I immediately direct that into an HR conversation, or I stop and I ask them if they would like to continue into an HR conversation and reschedule a coaching conversation. So that ways you've differentiated it.
Yeah, that's great. And I was wondering too, like about when someone hires you externally and as a coach. So you're in the coach mode, but they're talking about work stuff and things that I just want to dive in, and that's when you really have to stay in that coach mode, right? Because they've hired you as a coach. And that's where the challenge I'm seeing, because I know how to solve it. I think I know how to solve it, right? But is it okay for me to say, can I offer a suggestion or one thing I've seen that work, or do I really just keep all that knowledge separate?
I think sometimes it's about keeping that separate and making it about the individual. As a coach, you
Right.
would want to make that individual come up with the solution
Yes.
through your
Yeah.
questioning, right?
Yeah.
And I do find myself in your position as well, where I immediately want to answer, or I want to get I want to solve that. But it's
Yeah.
about I guess, like I said sometime back, it's about changing that mindset to them owning the solution. And
Right.
when they own the solution, it has much powerful impact. So that is what I would do to shift it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Dipti. Thanks for the question, Mary. So let's open up to the audience. I have a question for the audience. Has anyone that's listening shifted in how you think about coaching professionally as you've been listening to that? have you shifted in any way how you think about coaching professionally? And if you have, I'd love to hear it. And by the way, if there are other questions that are kind of going around your mind that you'd like to ask the panelists, just put them in the chat, and with the time we have, we'll go through them. So I'm saying Victoria saying what helps to create a coaching culture in organizations? That's a question from Victoria. Is there any specific initiatives that work best in organizations you worked in? Ida, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. So I think we mentioned about the change, especially in the individuals, right? Like when especially Jada gave great examples around the change she observed in the individuals. But I also want to mention about the change and change management in the organizations, and especially during the times of ambiguity, uncertain times. This is where coaching really plays a key role, especially through some leadership frameworks or leadership behaviors that's expected either from leaders or across all employees to change their behaviors. And this is kind of defined in a scientific way, which behaviors will take us to the future, which behaviors help us to have more engaged teams, and eventually we will reach where we want to reach in terms of the results and outcomes. And this is what we are also doing through coaching to help people to reach their goals and objectives in a certain time frame. So in that context, I think this kind of frameworks like leadership, defining the behaviors, and then within these behaviors, putting coaching as a really kind of a shift expected from people managers or leaders, not just directing them, but really supporting their employees through a coaching mindset is one of the key things I observe across multiple organizations. This is especially where from top-down approach coming from leadership, top leaders to embed a cascade to to entire organization. In other organizations where the maturity is still not there in terms of like leaders have no idea about coaching, they haven't heard about it, or they think it's like just directing the teams and giving instructions, then it's another challenge. In these organizations, it's more about introducing coaching first, making sure they understand coaching, putting a foundational stage through certain coaching capability trainings and building leaders as a coach, and then embedding the internal coaching by leveraging the internal coaches you have, or having an external kind of coach to train people internally, so that you kind of put the seeds in the organization, and over the years, like these seeds becomes like the ambassador of coaching culture. So this is what I see as a kind of a good practice.
Thanks, Ida. Victoria, I trust you got some value from that.
Yes,
So
thanks a lot.
awesome. I'm not seeing other questions come up, and I wonder if those of you who are participating, you would either through chat or volunteering to open up and speak, perhaps offer a short phrase or a sentence around what's standing out for you so far in today's panel discussion and conversations. What's standing out for you? Mary, no, the answer is no, we don't. I think what you'll find is the ICF chapter events are the ones that offer CCEs typically, but certainly we don't offer CCEs in the events. So thanks for sharing. So I'm just going to read a few of those. How being a coach really grows you as more authentic and more leadership capabilities. Yeah, thanks, Mary. Deanna, detachment is an interesting framework that I'm taking away. Yeah, I think one of the biggest values I've seen from my clients, the feedback I've heard is that when we talk about presence, like your presence in a coaching session, I think it was Angie that was referring to that word earlier on as well. So if you're learning through the coaching experiences, to let go of everything you believe you know, and you just show up purely for the client, um, that that intentionality starts to kind of get you very, very close to being detached, right? Because you're not walking in wanting to fix anything, to give any solutions. You really, as Jada was saying, I'm walking into a session with no, I'm just present, and I'm there, and I'll see what comes up, and I trust me, I trust the process, and I trust my client. And that word's a big word, and it's easily used. I think the point here is, do we see ourselves becoming more trusting? And as we do, I think that translates to becoming more present. There's no need to be anything else, right? Because you trust is going to happen. So where's your level of trust in those three things? And that's a really good indicator, tangible, right? You can just measure it. Just say, out of 5, where are you now? And as you're going through it, can you see development in all three stages? It's a real tangible way of moving forward and seeing the value translate out. So thanks, Diane, to kind of bring that back. Ivy, would you like to open up your line?
Yes, yes, thank you. I did. I am enjoying the conversation. I'm calling from Ghana, Accra, West Africa. And
Welcome.
when you were talking about that detachment and that presence, we actually co-create the trust. And that's, I think, competency. Is it 4?
It is.
We co-create that. Yeah, that trust with the client. And without that, really, the presence is not meaningful. And the detachment also is not only with the the session, but also detaching from the issue and paying more attention to the client and what the client may be going through at that moment than becoming fixated with the issue, and sometimes becomes very difficult when we are supposed to. I think it's DP that was talking about, we as we focus on the client and are present with the client, it helps them to think deeply and be able to unravel their own solutions in the process. Thank you.
Yeah, beautifully said. And absolutely, I totally agree with everything you just said, Ivy. And I think this is I don't know whether Deepti wants to say anything in response, but I think this is really a powerful realization about one of our jobs as coaches. Just to be aware that this is part of our job, to be aware of that and become better and better as we go along. And it never ends, right? Level 1 to level 2 to level 3. It's 3 levels of depth of coaching that ICF has identified. I don't think level 3 is saying you've reached, you're perfect. I think there's another level after that, and after that. So it really does reflect on who we are. Each of those levels reflects on who we are as a coach. As you go deeper into the levels, you realize how you're changing with that. I think Jada was referring to right at the beginning, right? How that was one of her changes through her journey. So thank you for that, Ivy. I appreciate that.
I am APC and pushing for PCC. Thank you.
Awesome. I encourage all of you, wherever you are on that curve. I encourage you to think about the competency depth as well as methodology, because we can learn different methodologies to add value to our clients. We can also learn depth. And I think the client is coming initially to get depth. That's my personal view, right? They're coming to get an impact through our coaching. The different methodologies are different strategies and tools we can apply to will also kind of add value. I believe that the thing that kind of really impacts what they're coming to get is the change they require and how we're showing up. And the competencies are a great kind of tool to do that for us. So we're coming towards the end, and I want to just thank you, the audience who kind of put their time on a Saturday to be here. I don't know what time zone you're in, but thank you for being here and listening and participating. I want to thank Ida, Angie, Jada, and Dipti that to come here, volunteer, and share their insights. Thank you for being with us here today. For those continuing to explore coaching kind of more seriously, when I say that, I mean really want to become a coach, building your own coaching business, building your revenue in coaching. Tomorrow's session is going to look into one of the biggest realities we face, and that is how coaching becomes sustainable professionally and practically. So it really is about the mindset of us running a business as opposed to the mindset of us coaching. Two different things, very different things. I'm going to put a link here. You can go into this web page and see tomorrow, register for tomorrow's session if that's something that interests you. I also want to just share that there is a number of articles, actually a lot of articles that we've written over the years, and I believe, depending on where your interest is, so if you're thinking, what is strength-based coaching? There are some articles there that identifies what it is as an approach. Also, articles around your business. How do you expand your business? What are the challenges? But also about competencies. So feel free to go and have a look at the free resources there. I'd love to always hear feedback. So if anybody has any thoughts or wants to link back with us, I've shared the email. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you and your time. And if you think about anything that you haven't asked, that you wanted to ask, and we've gone, please feel free to email us. We're more than happy to respond to that. Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Stay
Great.
safe.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone. See you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Great call.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.